Thank you for joining us on Malaika, the talk show for African Christian women. And I hope we do have men joining us today because we are talking about parents and teenagers. I'm joined in studio by my fellow beautiful co-hosts today, Jackie, Auntie Zods, and Mama Audrey. Thank you for being with us, Mama.
It's my privilege.
And we've got a mother, Vanessa Fitzroy, all the way from Mauritius, who will share her life with us today. We're so excited that you could join us.
Thank you so much.
So, viewers, today we talk about parents and teenagers. I mean, this is such a touchy topic because sometimes you never know how to handle the tantrums. But today, we hope this will be cut short so that we can know, we're Christians here, so it will be good for us to break it down today. But before we go into further detail, let's take this time to hear the overview that Jackie has for us. So, Jackie, you are a mother of a teenager.
I am indeed.
But let's hear what your overview has for us. I'm sure you also get a few tips today.
My ears are wide open. I tell you, I have a darling boy, but we all need to learn, don't we?
Yes, exactly.
So, teenagers, actually in Africa, they make up 60% of the population, which is very high. Physical and psychological changes that happen during these teenage years can start actually earlier for some, and they call this pre-teen, which is between 9 and 12. And the transitional period that happens brings about issues of independence and self-identity. Maybe one we should do about the 2-year-olds, when the 2-year-olds rebel. That would be interesting. Anyway,
terrible twos.
The terrible twos, exactly. Many teenagers face tough choices regarding school, sexuality, drugs, alcohol, and even their social life. Peer groups, romantic interests, and appearance tend to naturally increase at this time and to become a bit more important than they were before in these teenagers' journey to adulthood. Teenagers strive for autonomy and a bit less parental control, I can attest to that one, more rapidly than they develop self-regulation. Teenagers, the conflicts frequently happen because a teenager adheres increasingly to their peer group. So they cling more to their peers and they challenge family values and rules. Now to social media, which is a big one. In the 1990s, the use of mobile phones started its rapid spread along the developed world. Now, actually, there are more than 400 million subscribers in this market, and it's actually greater than North America. So Africa is taking the lead in this.
Wow.
And it says, rarely has anyone adopted mobile phones faster and with greater innovation. But child health experts on Facebook have warned. It says excessive use of digital devices and social media is harmful to children and to teens.
Okay.
And it says horrific and deeply troubling are the words that a commissioner used recently, accusing social media companies of losing control of the content of suicide and self-harm that they put online. And in Africa, suicide has actually increased, and the peak is amongst the youth. To end, a quote. I could have actually written this one. It says, in the time it takes to understand your 14-year-old, he turns 15.
So it keeps going, never stops.
You never stop learning, I tell you.
I'm telling you, I'm also going to get tips here. I might just have a teenager someday. So, Auntie Zods, I grew up in Southern Africa, and standard practice has always been that good at bringing good child and all of those things. Is that still the norm in Southern Africa?
Not necessarily the norm, because right now, I think traditionally, where we've lacked as parents and where we still lack as parents today is that culturally, the dad is not involved in raising children. So it's normally left to the mother. And as a result, that leaves a gap for the teenage child who's growing up. And I find even in many Christian homes that teenagehood is a time of contention. There's fighting, there's misunderstanding. The parents don't understand what's happening to this child. And meantime, the child is also trying to be understood. And very often they'll say, no one understands me. That's the normal teenagers, that's what they say. And I think when I'm observing, I think most of the lack is that we don't take care of the children from the beginning. So when a child is growing up, obviously he's left to the mother, but because the mother works, then they grow up on their own. So they're exposed to many things from a time of childhood. And Jackie mentioned social media. It's rife in Africa. Everybody has internet access these days. Though it's expensive, but a lot of teenagers, I don't know how, but they find a way to have the data.
Yes.
And as a result, because parents are not involved, kids are left to free access of internet. So they see all sorts of things and they get damaged. But then now for the parent, they're still in parent mode where they're looking at this person as a child and not realizing that now this is a young adult coming up. And then they try now to bring out the belt, but it's too late because now they're realizing we can't control this person. What has happened to our little baby? It's like we wake up when it's already too late because we haven't been involved from the beginning. And that's the biggest struggle for many Christians because they really mean well. They want to raise good kids, but they don't know how. There's been no teaching that you need to be there from the beginning. Then we have the free-spirited parents, which is a growing number in Southern Africa, especially those that now have money, influence, and have access to many things. They're not even involved, so it's free for all. I even know a family where the mother actually said, I'm not going to put any boundaries on my child because I want them to experiment the world. They must experiment it to its full, which is scary because what those kids have turned out to be, I would not want my children to be like that. But it's that new age parenting, adopting the Western culture. And that has raised a very rebellious group of teenagers that we don't know what to do with. And as Jackie said, then they turn to drugs, they turn to friends for fellowship, they turn to alcohol, they turn to all sorts of things, just trying to fill that gap because there's a gap between the parent and the child.
And so, Mama Audrey, today we're actually speaking to Christians in general. There's a lot of issues. And is this all for Christians as well?
Are we talking Christians? We're not even talking the world.
And so now, Mama Audrey, what should parents do? Because children are not cut up from the same cloth, you know, so we can't copy and paste to say this is what should happen, all kids. But what do parents do now as Christians to curb this problem that Auntie Zods is mentioning?
You know, I think it's starting on the wrong foot anyway. You know, you've got so many different situations, like Auntie Zods was speaking of free parenting. You know, especially I think in Africa and in the third world, we find many couples who have been poor, who went through lack. And now that they have something in life, they want to make up for that by giving to their children whatever they want.
Exactly, that's it.
And that is a syndrome. That is a reality that is causing much problem. Because now suddenly they don't want to deprive that child of anything, not only food, but whatever he wants. You know, can have his mobile phone. He mustn't have anything less than anybody around, because they want to compensate that lack, and that is such a mistake. And we often see on television, you know, when you've got a parental control. But parental control shouldn't be just for films. It should be for everything.
True.
But the basis is from the beginning to build a relationship. And it's sad when we hear Auntie Zods say that the father is not there for education, because he's a key person. We know the mother is the one bringing the atmosphere, the one in charge of taking care of the kids, of the house. But the father is so important, that father figure. No wonder that the teenagers don't want to hear about God, because they never had a father. And it's so important for this father. Spends time with his daughters. He goes outside and hits a ball with his son, and, you know, walk a little bit of road with him and find out what he's going through. Get to know him. Because if you don't know him, you don't know the struggles he's going through, because it's true, these teenagers are going through, I'm thinking of Christian teenagers, because obviously even more so the children of the world, but they are going through so much struggle, so much pressure from the world, so much influence from the world. That if the parents don't take their place, and they don't come like a wall between the world and their kids, I mean, the kids are just simple targets.
Maybe this is a good opportunity to just hear from Vanessa. You've got 3 children, and one is actually a teenager. Or is it 2 of them? I mean, you can enlighten us, you know. And as Mama Audrey mentions that the father is a key role. For you and your husband, how has it been like raising these 3 children?
Thank you so much. Yes, I don't want to repeat what Mama Audrey said, but it's true that parenting has to be done as a team, and I really do feel for those single moms out there that are alone raising their children, because I honestly don't know how I would have done it without my husband, together as a team. And it's so true that the father has a role in the lives of their children, and that relationship is key for them. So for us, yes, we have 2 teenage kids. I have an older daughter who's already married now. But it's amazing when we were speaking about the social media aspect with phones today. It's such a huge thing, and every child is different and has different needs at different times.
Exactly.
And for us as a principal, we really wanted to delay the whole having a phone, because we knew that it could be such a distraction. But for Juliana, when she was 16, my eldest daughter, we gave her a phone because she was traveling for health purposes, and we thought it would be good a support to her. And so it was a good idea as parents, and with a good motivation. And actually after a while, it took a while, but we didn't expect it. She came into our room the one day and she said, you know, Mom and Dad, my phone is not good for me, and I want to give it back to you.
Wow, that's
And
wonderful.
we were quite amazed. We weren't expecting it. And she said, no, the Lord has really convicted me. And this is not good for me, so I want to hand it in. And she handed in her phone for 3 months. And after 3 months or more, she came back to us and she said, okay, I think I'm okay. And honestly, we laugh about it today because she's the worst on her phone. She's never on her phone. She never responds. And she's really free because she allowed the Lord to do that work in her heart.
Amazing.
And that is precious. My son, it was different. We waited until he was 18 to give him a phone. And we see how in that relationship, how if we're not careful and we just surrendering to the pressure of the world, to that peer pressure, how that influence comes straight into your home, and not only into your home, into their bedroom.
Exactly.
And it's
indirectly into your home.
Indirectly into your home, into their bedroom, into your intimacy as a family. And it's very intrusive. And it can be very damaging, I think,
Well, I mean, I think that reflects a lot on you as parents as well, for you and your husband, which is such a good thing, you know, that I'm sure a lot of people will try and take a page from that book, though it's not copy and paste. We trust the Lord. But as Vanessa is mentioning all these extremes, Auntie Zods, what are the actual extremes that we see in Southern Africa?
We've got a worrying phase that has come into mainly Zimbabwe, Botswana, and South Africa, which is to show the depth of the lack in the teenagers and what they are really facing in the world. There's they call it vuzu parties. And in these vuzu parties, it's the drug lords who actually organize them. And they will supply the drugs for free. The party is for free, so just bring your friends. And in there, it's a den of iniquity. And they pride themselves when a young boy sleeps with 10 girls in one night. He's the star. They even pay him money for that. And this is true. And it's happening in our community. And some of our children have been found and influenced by this. And this is somewhere showing that the parents are not there. Because if a child is at a vuzu party, it ends at 2 a.m., where is mom and where is dad to release a child to be out for so long? And what's amazing, though, is that you speak to the teenagers themselves. We obviously, with all these young people, when you talk to the teenager, we actually spoke to a few of them. You know, there's cool guys. They look chains and they look like they know they've got everything under control. But if you actually ask them, what do you desire? They'll tell you that I would love to have a relationship with my dad. I would love to have a relationship with my mom. I wish they knew what I'm going through. I wish they knew the pressures I'm under. So the children are crying out, but the parents are too busy.
They're not heard.
The parents are too busy. They are not hearing. So we're losing them to the world, which is very sad.
Mama Audrey, there's a gap here that is causing a lot of rebellion and disobedience and waywardness that is not being used to in Southern Africa. How can that be dealt with?
You know, the Lord has given the authority to raise up children to the parents. It's not given to the school, to the children's church, or to the pastor. It's the responsibility of the parents.
Okay.
So if the parents do not take their place and their responsibility, the gap is wide open for the world, for the enemy, for whatever to come in. You know, we're speaking of relationship. I can say my girls are today 40 years old, but let me tell you, the relationship with their dad is as strong as it ever was, and it has protected them so much from so many traps in the world.
Yes.
Because for them, their dad is like the second God in their lives. It is such an important relationship that we cannot stress it enough. For the fathers to understand their place, even for their boys. The children are so proud of their dad. And it is so important for them to take their place and to have mom supporting and then being united in that raising up of children.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
they must love their child.
Yeah.
What is the loving of their child means? Buying them everything they want in the shops? No.
No.
It's to get to know them and to, from the early age, to get that relationship there. You know, to see the dad taking up his baby and talking to the baby and playing with the baby and lying on the carpet and walking with the baby, whatever, starts early so that when the struggles of life come, the door is open for that child to come and share with his parents, because many teenagers are scared to share with their parents, because if they do, they don't even know what will be the reaction of the father and the mother, because they, I know a pastor who was very close to us. His child was in his house, was smoking drugs, was involved in selling phones on the street, stealing phones and selling. He knew nothing. So now how can you help that child? He knew absolutely nothing of what was happening in the life of this child. Fortunately, by the grace of God, the Lord in the end got hold of that child and brought him back to him. And this is when the father found out what was happening all this time in his home. He had no idea. So how can you expect your child to grow? That is the number one gift God has given them, before their car, before their house, before their job, before whatever. That is the number one gift God has given you for you to care for. And this is your first congregation if you're a pastor. Make sure that you know your child, that he is not just a stranger in your house. Your ministry is coming first, you don't have time for him, and then you expect him to follow this principle, that principle, that principle, but there's no relationship. The child is angry, he's frustrated, he's let down. So it is, there's no secret, huh?
So we'll actually come back to that later, because I think that's a very important point that needs to be stressed.
Yes.
But, you know, for Vanessa, as you said, you had 3 kids, and we hear how children rebel and go in ways that are not fathomed. But did you have a situation where your children rebelled? I mean, if you didn't, I think many parents out there would like to know.
To get your address.
Exactly.
Of course, I think we had the blessing of having role models in front of us in the church, and we saw examples of what real parents needed to be, how real parents needed to be, and the heart of the Lord. And I think without a vision for your children to be born again, I think it's important for them to have their own relationship with the Lord. And I think it's important to nurture that so that they can hear from the Lord through you and in their relationship with the Lord as well. So it's important to have a vision for your children to know Jesus, to have a relationship with him.
Amen.
And then we can build on that. Because if that's not there, I mean, we can still raise them up, but it's even better the sooner they get saved, the sooner they have that born-again experience. Then it's not only mommy says, but it's the Word of God. It's what the Lord has for them. Because as parents, we have a lot of good ideas.
Exactly.
But it's not necessarily God's plan for our kids. And I know that even with my son, who maybe he went through struggles and difficult times, and there were good ideas for him. There was things lined up for him, and it was fine. It ticked all the right boxes. But in my heart, I was not at peace. In my heart, I was troubled. And I went before the Lord, and then I spoke to my pastor, and I shared my heart, and I shared my heart with my husband first. And we both agreed that all our good ideas were not God's plan. And when we shared with the pastor said, yeah, God has another plan for your boy. And it's so wonderful that as parents, we make mistakes. We make lots of mistakes. But when we come before the Lord, He rectifies everything and brings everything back into His plan and His heart for our kids.
I mean, Mama Audrey, you know, Vanessa highlighted something of how they trusted the Lord and prayed regarding their son. That means whatever they had to say to him, I think he was open to hear because of that foundation. But now in Southern Africa, we've got what is called the age of majority, 16, 18, 21. Now children are in their parents' homes, but they're like, but I make my own decision. I've got an ID, I've got a license. Maybe some of them are even working. So we're talking to Christian parents. This is what happens in Christian homes. And you hear parents say, oh, okay, he's 21, he's 18, he earns his own money. Or even if he doesn't earn his own money, but he can make his own decisions. What can be said?
I mean, that is anarchy. It doesn't exist. My house is very important to me. The atmosphere of my house, what happens in my house, that takes place in my house. I don't want my house to be soiled. I don't know if you understand what I mean.
Yes.
It's not something
Maybe
that
explain to
pastor coming
someone
to
out
pray.
there
No.
who's listening, who'd like to understand that part of being soiled.
I'm doing by what happens in my house. I mean, my house, me and my house, I shall serve the Lord. I mean, my family.
Yes.
And my house is a place where I want the peace of the Lord to be there, where the presence of the Lord, where things happen that are pleasing to the Lord. There's nothing that is outside that just grows freely in my house, with me knowing it. So I think that if my child is 21, he's very welcome to stay with me, by all means. But even if he's 21, my house is still my house.
Exactly.
He's not going to come in and bring his girlfriend in my house and go into his room. No. He's not going just to put the kind of music he wants loud in my house, because it's still my house. It's still our house, and he's got to respect it.
Yes.
And he will have to help if he eats, be part of the house, not because he's 21 now, just eats, he leaves his plate, he goes, no. There's no such thing. He's there, he's part of the house, it's not a hotel.
Exactly.
It's not a hotel, it's not a boarding house. He's there, even if he wants to contribute, he should. If he's working, he should help and participate, and he should respect the house. If he wants to have his own life and he wants to have his own music, he's free to move out and to get his own house, but he doesn't want to save on me, to stay under my roof, and then he does whatever he wants under the roof. No. I think if he's in our house, and even more so if there are younger children, we set the standards. The standards are there, and it's not like a law with a magistrate or whatever, but there's a minimum that he must respect, which is our convictions as Christians. And this, we don't go back on that.
And so now this is the role of, you know, because most of the time it's always the mother who's trying to bring this. And I think it's really important if you can help the father in this instance, because then the father says, oh, deal with your child.
No, it's not your child, it's our child.
Yes.
And it's everything, it's in accordance with us as parents. I remember my husband told my 16-year-old daughter one day, don't you go through the window if you want to go out at night. If you want to go out, you ask me. In other words, whatever I tell you will be the answer. So, but in there, me and Mickey were in agreement. There is no such thing like, you know, it's your child. No. It's like, you know, the Lord said to Moses, it's your people. And Moses says, no, Lord, it's your people. You know, it's the same thing, like he really tried to put the ball. But I think what Vanessa also said is very important, is to look for help. Because there is I always say to people, that's a saying that you can write down, is there's a big direction. There is a big difference between good ideas and direction.
Amen.
Maybe we can actually take that and put it in your final word, Mama Audrey. Can you believe we're already almost out of time?
Are we there?
Yeah,
No, I
but
can't believe it.
in that final word, as you're saying, to look for help, maybe you can just encourage the parents as well as the teenagers, so to bring some sort of unity, to bring some sort of foundation for both as Christians.
You know, I think that the parents' roles should really make room, open the door, make a platform for the kids to be able to share with them. And if by now you've not been dad to your son, you can repair it. You can still go to your son and say, son, I'm sorry. I missed out. I wasn't there for you when you needed me, but please forgive me. And let's start to build that from now.
Okay.
I want to be a help. I want to be dad. It's so important for parents to be able to repair. There's no such thing when we're Christians that it's too late.
No.
It's never too late. If I realize today that I failed as parents, I wasn't there as a dad, fine. I can't change the past. But I can go to the Lord and say, Lord, I'm sorry, I missed it. Help me. I can go to my son, I can go to my daughters, I can go to my wife. I can repair, and we can start a new foundation.
Right.
And then, obviously, as parents, we don't know everything. There are people who have walked before us, that have had experiences before us, and this is supposed to be the men of God that are walking before us.
Yes.
And we should be able to open our hearts to them and say, guys, we're struggling. Let's not pretend that everything is fine. We're struggling. Even as a pastor, I'm struggling. I've got a problem with my children. I know many pastors who lost their children to the world. And look for help. As I said, there's a lot of difference between good ideas. Maybe I was planning for my son to do this, and the direction of the Lord.
That's
It's,
right.
it's completely different.
There we have it, viewers. Thank you so much to all our guests, and all our co-hosts today. It's been such a pleasure. We could talk and talk and talk. There's always more to say. That's why we want to encourage you to continue to write to us on our social media pages, as on the link at the bottom of the screen. Questions, views, anything. We're here and would love to hear from you. So thank you for joining us once again today. And we hope to see you again next time. And God bless and goodbye. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. We were very happy to have you, and we've got lots more interesting topics to discuss on Malaika. But to stay up to date, you need to subscribe, as on the bottom of the screen. Just click that button, to stop me from talking. Click it, and see you soon.